Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 23rd of July. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Yeah, going good, Derek. Good to be here. Some news to talk about, which is always nice, and it looks as if some movement might be happening in Rangers transfer window, which hasn't been the case for a couple of weeks. So, yeah, I'm all good, thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Before we get stuck into the Rangers news, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors, MPH Boilers, the award-winning family-run business covering all of mainland Scotland. They've got those brilliant Viessmann boilers still on offer. So if your boiler is on the blink, then please do give them a call. The all-important links are in the description below. Right, where shall we start? We'll start transfer news. You've got a piece on the website this morning, Joshua, just on the sort of current state of play. It looks like things are moving with regards to notable departures and potential incomings at Rangers. Of course, the news over last weekend, tail end of last week, was that James Tavernier had agreed terms with Trabzonspor, and it's just up to both clubs to agree a fee. Connor Goldson over in Cyprus, of course, we understand was undertaking a medical, who is about to join. It's a little bit unclear, although the reports in Cyprus suggest that talks are ongoing between Aris Limassol and Connor Goldson. A number of publications over there reporting that. So that will be certainly an interesting move for him. There's also seen reports this morning that a number of championship clubs and teams abroad are interested in signing Scott Wright. So it certainly looks like things now moving with regards to departures. There was a newspaper report last night as well, a player that has been heavily linked in previous transfer windows to Rangers, Lauren Shankland. Apparently, that may now be back on the table as well. So things are moving, Joshua.
Yeah, a few things to get into. I mean, first and foremost, the Tavernier one, obviously since that second bid came in from Trabzonspor. I'm still struggling to say that correctly.
Trabzonspor.
There we are. I'll just defer to you every time we have to say it. But since that second offer came in, we'd expect that to get done. I think similar to Goldson, and the Goldson one is interesting because it's emerged that's been one, I guess, alongside Tavernier, Derek, where you can't really separate the two, because not only because they're vice captain and they're captain, but they kind of really represent the core of that squad, don't they? The core of the squad that Steven Gerrard built in 2018. The noises have been, I would say, slightly quieter on Goldson for the last couple of weeks, but has emerged that I would now expect him to go. As you say, it's still not clear exactly where that move is going to be where it's going to be to, the exact timing of it, but I would expect that to happen. And a lot of these noises that have kind of been in the background for Rangers for a lot of the transfer market, we've known for a long time that they're effectively open to offers for a lot of their players. We've known that they would like to do a lot of business, but equally, and we'll come on to this maybe when we discuss Lauren Shankland later as well, there is a reality to the fact that it's not only that they need to get money in from the players who go out, but you need to remember the wage bill and the situation there, and the fact that Rangers had 5 players out of contract at the end of last season, of whom they got absolutely no money for. The exits of Tavernier and Goldson, which I think we can now say are expected, would I guess trigger be the two type of signings, not only for the fee, because obviously you're not going to get the types of fees for them you might have when they were at the peak of their career, but also the wages that you're going to be able to regenerate into the squad as well. That is significant, and we've heard a lot about rebuilding over the last few summers, Derek, and there was a lot of players brought in last summer, and there was a clear new direction that obviously didn't work. But the core of the squad, much like the summer before, was still very much built around the likes of Tavernier and Goldson. That was still the leadership group. Those were still the key players who were kind of leading the team at the height of the wage bill. All of that this summer looks like that is changing. The difficulty, I guess, if you're Philippe Clement, is that he dropped Connor Goldson at the tail end of last season, Derek. That hasn't happened at all in his whole time at Rangers. No. I don't think his form had merited it like it did at the tail end of last season. And if you looked at his comments publicly a couple of weeks ago, if he really, really wanted those two players to stay definitively, and if he was not interested in them leaving the club, he would have said as much, because that's what he said about Jack Butland. I think the back end of this conversation, which we'll come on to as well, is Rangers kick off their league season in 11 days' time. And you know as well as I that if that doesn't go well, no matter how many new signings you're bringing in, you need to give yourself a foothold in August to make sure that the season looks good enough going into September. So I think it's going to be a busy 11 days in the lead up to that. Obviously, the transfer window goes on until the end of August. And the question now for Rangers is if and when these exits do happen, who's going to come and replace them, and how quickly can you get them in? Because there's no doubt, in my opinion, and we mentioned this, I think, before the Manchester United game, I think the squad that Rangers would travel, if they were to travel today to Tynecastle, I think that squad is probably weak. Yeah, and I think it's probably weaker than the one that ended last season with that 3-3 draw. Certainly, I don't think many people would argue it's much stronger. Now you've bought players for the future. The age, the average age of signings has come right down. But you take my point, you also need to have the squad ready to go and win games in August, and I think that's going to be the challenge, especially over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. We'll touch on Shankland then. Francis with the point says, is there any substance in the Shankland rumour? Of course, he's someone that was heavily linked in the winter transfer window. I have a feeling if it wasn't Shankland, Rangers had to go out and get a proper bona fide number 9 in the winter window. I think it certainly contributed to them not winning the league title last season. I think it's imperative Rangers bring in someone that is able to finish chances and, more basic than that, control a ball that's passed to him within about 5 to 10 yards. Dessers, let's just say his control was left a lot to be desired at the weekend, and a lot of fans cannot envisage another season with him leading the line. Shankland would be an upgrade on Dessers, Joshua, for me, and he's someone, I mean, got to say it was clear in the winter window. I think his price tag would have put Rangers off, and I don't think he's a player that Philippe Clement ideally could see fitting into his system. Do you think there's maybe been a little change of thought from the manager here?
Yeah, well, something we'll be trying to ascertain exactly what the intention is now. I think to take it back to January, our information kind of in hindsight of that, and at the time was a few factors to this, to Derek. He was discussed at the highest level, key decision makers. You know, they're not immune to the conversation that goes on. But it wasn't a transfer that had been a long way down the line. It wasn't one of these ones where I think you got to the final day of the January transfer window, and there was a lot of expectation that maybe the Shankland transfer would happen out of nowhere. But it wasn't one that Rangers had agreed personal terms with the players and had held a lot of negotiations with Hearts. The fact to remember is Rangers didn't have a lot of money to spend in January. Obviously, the Mohamed Diomande money was committed to then be paid in the summer, much like you're seeing with the Oscar Cortez money. Yes, Rangers have committed that money, but they're not spending it on the player now. As well as that, you look at the makeup of their squad. Now, Sam Lammers was going out on loan in January, but in January you had Danilo, who you'd spent $6 million on, and yes, he was injured at the time, but 24-year-old striker, or 25 now, who Rangers had spent a lot of money on. You had Sam Lammers, you had Cyril Dessers, and you had Kemar Roofe, all on the wage bill. Now, to go and add a fifth striker to that complement, Derek, when you are trying to change the recruitment philosophy, and that's what we've heard Clement say repeatedly in interviews. He's spoken about not just looking to the short term. And I think Shankland in many ways kind of fits the argument of what he spoke about to the press out in the Netherlands when he said that effectively he has to look long term with signings. If it was to only be about bringing short term success, he would only go and sign experienced players. Shankland's 28, he knows the league really well. He scored 31 goals last season. But if Rangers then went and had 5 players in one given position, all on pretty good money, and all over the age of 4 of those over the age of 26, 27, and Danilo now 25 as well. From a squad building point of view, I think it is decisions like that where Rangers have stockpiled in certain positions. Just look at the number 10 position at the moment, where you've got Haji and Lowry and Cantwell and Dowell and Lawrence. The squad building is what has got them into this situation. So I don't think it was a simple transfer in that regard, because you've also got to remember that the amount of money that it was worth to Hearts for them to finish third place, and therefore the amount of money it would have cost Rangers to go in for the player at that time, because they'd effectively, if for Hearts to sell Shankland, they'd have had to be compensated for the fee that they could have potentially lost out on, that they would have been worth keeping him anyway to get that fee even if now, heading into the summer of 2024, he's a year out of contract. Another factor I was told was the fact that Clement, and maybe this isn't going to be a popular point after the Manchester United game at the weekend, and his style of play again, Derek, is something we're going to come on to discuss, especially in the next couple of weeks, because I think that's something that deserves a lot of attention heading into the new season. But Clement is said to want a pressing forward, or that was certainly an argument that there was a discussion that took place in January. Someone who can lead the line, someone who's a really aggressive presser. I think Danilo gives you that, and Dessers is not fast, but I do think he's a relatively intelligent player off the ball, even if we know the mistakes he can make on the ball. And I don't think even Shankland's biggest defender would say that is the best quality of his game, his off-ball work, leading the press, being really intense in that regard. On the flip side of that, there is a reality that he scored a lot of goals, 31 goals, I think, last season, 24 in the Scottish Premiership. Everyone knows what a good player he is. And he isn't just a goal scorer, is he? Because he really brings players into play as well. He's someone who's played a bit deeper at points, which is, I think, always an encouraging sign, because that shows that, okay, he is 28, but maybe at 32, 33, he's still going to be someone who can be in the box, but not have to rely on running in behind all the time to score his goals. Not that is how he necessarily gets his goals at the moment. So definitely one to watch. As you say, the report suggests there's been a bit of a change in heart. That was our information in January. I don't think you can deny that he'd score a lot of goals. I think the question is for Rangers, if they're to add one more striker to this trio, if they are to be able to move Cyril Dessers on, which they would like to do if they can get the right amount of money for, is Shankland the one who's going to take you up that level and give you those goals domestically? Because obviously the Hamza Igamane conversation is important in this as well. He's going to take time to contribute, and that's an important thing to consider when you're thinking about Champions League qualifiers, when you're thinking about must-win games coming up in the next few weeks. But if you were to get a number of those older strikers off the wage bill, and Lammers and Dessers and Roof now compared to January, then I guess what you would say is the picture has changed, certainly from a Rangers perspective.
Yep. Now, Eggman training at the training centre, folks, there were a few rumours doing the rounds last week that he was out long-term injured. That is not the case. But Rangers just building him up. He's a wee bit away. The manager did touch on this a number of interviews now, that he will take a wee bit of time before he's able to play matches. Whether he features on Wednesday, I'm not so sure. But there you go. Danilo.
To put it back to you, what do you think about Shankland? Because it's in some quarters it feels to me like it's a debate where there's not many people who don't think, again, if the price was right, he's only got a year left on his contract. Now that's a weaker negotiating position than Hearts would have had in January. I mean, do you think he would, hypothetically, if Rangers go into that the next season with three strikers, would he be on that list for you?
Yeah, I'd feel more confident in matches with Lawrence Shankland up front as opposed to Cyril Dessers, which is all you need to know. But yeah, in terms of price, a lot of people saying £1.5, maybe £2 million, which I think is probably reasonable. Whether Hearts would accept that, it remains to be seen. But listen, I think it would be a good move all round if Rangers are able to strike a deal with Hearts and bring him into the club. So I think it would be an upgrade. Again, Cyril Dessers, we know there is a lot of noise around him. I can't see him staying if Shankland is brought in. So I think that would be a move that would see one replacing the other. But back on the table, it seems. A few points coming in. This is an interesting one from James. You sort of touched on this, Joshua. Says, can Shankland do the hard pressing that Clement demands from his number 9? He is a yes for me. So he's backing a Shankland move. That was sort of evident. Dessers doesn't really press well, does he?
I think do you remember the PSV game where Abdallah Sima, do you know what you're thinking about pre-season? You remember this time last season how people were calling Abdallah Sima like the worst signing that Rangers had ever made, and Sam Lammers was the best signing that Rangers. It just shows you how pre-season you just don't know what's going to happen. But if you remember that PSV game, the goal that Sima scored, and he had endured one of the worst opening 45 minutes I can remember watching a player at Ibrox. But that was an early indication, I think, of what Cyril Dessers did well. off the ball. I don't think he's particularly quick, and we see that, but I do think he's quite a clever player. And this is when I did a piece, maybe April time. Remember, Dessers came out and basically said, look, I know I'm not an aesthetically pleasing striker. I know at times I can be frustrating, but I know I'm effective. Look at my goals record since I've come into the team. And there's an argument there that's probably for another day. Although I don't think you would get many people who would argue, Derek, that if you can get the money back from at his age, given that you're not going to be able to get that money back next season, it definitely would be the right time for Rangers to trade him. But the point is, when I did that article, something that his ex-coach has always said to me is, don't underestimate how clever he is. He's a really intelligent player. That's why managers like him. So I don't think we should confuse someone who's fast for someone who's a good presser. Because what Clement wants in his team, and yes, we've not seen that this much. We've not seen it this much in pre-season. Saturday was not a good game, even if it was Manchester United. It was a really weakened side, wasn't it? But I do think that is one area of his game where he is intelligent and how he tries to split play at points, and he needs probably players around him to do that. But he's also 28, 29. I don't think he's got the legs to probably press at the intensity that Clement would want, because if you then go and look at what Danilo brings you, and even look at the final 15 minutes of the Ajax game, Derek, compared to the kind of 75 minutes that played out before that, when you had just younger players at the top end of the pitch, it was much more aggressive. I think just because of the simple facet that they were quicker and across the ground, and they could apply pressure at a faster pace. So I don't think that is Shankland's the finest bit of Shankland's game.
No,
his off ball work, and that's just to say that he's a certain type of forward. Whereas I think if you look at someone like Danilo, if you think back to the Sparta Prague game where Rangers won 2-1 at home, that was one of the better games under Clement off the ball. And that's such an important part of the game these days. And it's something that's not always looked great and has faced a lot of criticism, especially when he's been playing, square pegs and round holes for a lot of last season. I think it's quite clear with Cyril Dessers, Derek, that if Rangers can get the money for him, he will go. He's 28. You signed him on a relatively long contract. That would just be a smart move. Even if he was someone who fans did want to keep, you need to sell players at the right time. And if you're able to get a good bit of money back for a player who is 28 years old, going 29, you have younger players in that position, I think that would be a sensible decision probably for all parties.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott's Wilder with the point says, if Kenny Miller had pasted on and would miss easy chances but score Wildies. Rangers need a Kenny Miller type for me. That would be much appreciated if they can go and find a sort of carbon copy. William with the point says, Dessers does press well. Lawrence and Wright don't. When Dessers presses, the rest of the team set off. Leads us on to Scott Wright. As I touched on there, we knew that there was Sheffield Wednesday interest. Now, apparently, according to reports, that Preston and Derby have also made inquiries, and he has interest as well from overseas. I thought he was pretty decent at the weekend, Scott Wright, Joshua, but I don't think, as I said on the Q&A show yesterday, he's not that he's. I wouldn't be opposed to having him as part of the squad. I do know that Rangers do need better quality, of course, but he's not the major issue at Rangers at this moment in time. But if he does move on, I think that would be a good move for him down there in the English Championship. I can see him doing well. Yeah,
I mean, he's just. I think he's someone who. How long has he been here now? 4 years, just about 4 years.
Christmas time. Does it? 2018 was it the Gerrard?
Yeah, and obviously,
when was it? The 2020.
It was midway through. It was the January 2021. That's when it was. You forget about Scott Wright that he wasn't signed as a winger, and he's not really an out. If you look at how Gerrard played him early on, and how Beale, I'm sure, would have wanted to use him as well. It was kind of as one of those number 10s, because what he is actually really good at is his decision making. I think has consistently been lacking in a Rangers shirt. And he's one of these players that you always hear people maybe a couple of years ago say he is really effective in training. He just struggles to I guess, translate that to a game, and you can't be a starter at Rangers if that is the case. Yeah. But if you look at what he's really good at, I think it is when he turns in the middle of the park and when he drives Rangers forward. We've not seen it much, but that is probably what he is pretty effective at. But you can't. I think for optics as much as anything. For Clement and for Koppen and for this new Rangers core, there's a lot of players who have just been here for a long time, and at the end of the day, sometimes fans want to see new players. I think it's as simple as that, and in that position in particular, the right wing position, you need more quality. I think in an ideal situation, Derek, Ross McCausland, I thought he had a good first season. He had a really difficult circumstance to come into because he was thrown in at the deep end. And not many Rangers players have been able to make that jump from the B team into the first team, and that should be remembered. That he did that. He had that injury against Motherwell, which kind of slowed his momentum. He got an international call-up. But I think in an ideal world, you would have Ross McCausland starting 15, 20 games a season and competing with someone ahead of him who was that experienced, a little bit more experienced player on the right wing, but also had the quality. Now, you've got to remember that who is likely going to be Rangers right back next season, Dujon Sterling. What suits in terms of a player that plays ahead of him. I'd like to see Rangers go out and sign a player on the right wing who's left-footed, who's a goal threat. And I know we've been talking about that for about 2 or 3 years, and they're in high demand. Amad Diallo was someone who came to the club, obviously, and we saw him at the weekend, didn't we? But we just wasn't able to settle in. He was very young, ended up only playing, I think, 4 league matches. But someone in that mould who is a goal threat from out wide, who gives you a nice balance on the right-hand side. Because going back to when, Van Bronckhorst wanted to use wingers and Rangers brought in Rabbi Matondo, who was never a natural fit for the right side, was he? They've always lacked, I think, quality and depth in that position. Van Bronckhorst ended up playing Scott Arfield out there, didn't he? And Scott Wright, who obviously started in the Europa League final, I think he would be probably the last player from that team if Goldson and Tavernier and Wright are to go, who did start that night in Seville, which would, I guess, signify that it is a new era and there is a new squad, new core of the squad at Ibrox. But don't know about you, I just think Rangers, one of the positions that's crying out for quality is that right wing.
For years, yeah. Not had a proper right winger since Daniel Candace for me. Not someone that sort of just nailed down that position. James Strachan has kindly donated to the channel, so thank you very much for that, James. He tunes in from down under. Says, can we please get 2 strikers who do the little part of the game as needed to win games? Put the ball in the net, especially against the... them, get rid of Dessers, Lammers, bring in Shanks and Miovski. So he wants Shankland and Miovski. I very much doubt that's going to happen. Aberdeen want it. You've got the Rangers tax on top of that, I'd imagine, as well. So I think Lawrence Shankland would be more likely than Bojan Miovski. There's an interesting point as well, just on 2 other players that look to be heading out, Todd Cantwell and Yanis Haji. Reports in Romania suggest that Haji has already agreed personal terms with his former club, Fiorentina. Again, it's up to both clubs to agree on a fee. Now, reports in Romania suggest that Rangers looking for €3.5 million, so roughly around £3 million. And Todd Cantwell, I think, is someone we haven't seen yet this pre-season. And I think Rangers pretty much open to offers for Todd Cantwell. I can see him moving on. He has been linked with moves abroad, Joshua, as well as down south. Those 2 I expect to see moving on as well. You'd imagine that would generate more funds as well because, as I touched on there, Rangers will be looking for pretty decent transfer fees for both.
Yeah, I mean, both these players, I think Cantwell maybe less so, but Haji, I think, has been expected. Now, you don't know what could happen. He could come back and have a really good pre-season, I believe. I think he is back in training this week. I could be wrong on that, but I think he might be back this week. Obviously, had an extended break, didn't he, after the Euro 2024 campaign, and he got married on national television, which must have been high pressure. So we need to remember, I think, within this conversation that the Rangers season does kick off in 11 days' time. And Haji is a player who I don't think he's an out-and-out right winger, but he is a quality player. He splits opinions sometimes. He is someone who can play on that side. Now, I don't expect him to come back and start for Clermont on the opening day of the season. He might. I'd be surprised, but obviously he hasn't been in the building at all since the Belgian manager came in, but he played there quite a lot under Van Bronckhorst. But both those players fit into that bracket of if Rangers get the right offer for them, they'll try and regenerate that money. Cantwell's a slightly different conversation. I've been probably someone who's been more of a fan of him than others. I don't think you can doubt his quality. As we discussed at length last season, Derek, the style of football that changed from Beale's system to Clermont's, I don't know how well that suited him. At times, I don't think he helps himself, and also he's lacked kind of a big performance or big performances in key fixtures. Now, I'm sure he'd also point to injuries. I'm sure he'd point to his role changing. You think back to the position he played even in the first Old Firm game of last season under Michael Beale. And it was just a bit of a weird setup, and I don't think it got the best out of him. But equally, I guess that is a fact of football and life. It's not always going to be ideal situations, and you've got to keep your level consistent. The most revealing thing that Clement said about Cantwell, I think, was after that Dundee game when the league was gone, and he simultaneously really praised him and really criticised him in the same answer, didn't he? Because he effectively said, yes, we know how good he can be, but if you look at the difference between the first half and the second half, he needs to be on it every moment and every second to produce it, especially at a club like this. So I'm someone who would be more open to Cantwell staying, because I think he can be worth more than potentially Rangers could get from this summer. But equally, you can understand that if the style of play fit isn't quite right, if that relationship isn't the same as the one before, where obviously Beale played a big part in bringing Cantwell to Rangers, and there was a real alignment in the style of play there, then it might be another one that makes sense. It just depends how much business can Rangers actually do in the last month of the season, Derek, because can you trade in 20 players in and out in one transfer window? No, probably not. But if circumstances align for you and you're able to trade a number of players out at the right time, then maybe that suits you. But they're going to have to be tactical about it as well, because you've got to remember that the Champions League squad needs to be submitted on the 1st of August. Yeah. You can only make 2 changes in there. So what Rangers can't do is, for example, try and sell a player who they're going to get a couple extra million for, disrupt their Champions League squad by not putting them in there, and then they miss out on the Champions League money. Because as we'll maybe talk about just before the show ends, the Champions League draw, I think, is relatively favourable compared to last season and even the season before, and that has to be a big focus as well. We're thinking about the league season kicking off in 11 days, but the Champions League squad needs to be submitted in 9 days, I think, if someone can do my maths for me, which is just as important, if not more, when you think of the money that is committed now to getting into the group stage.
Yeah, if Rangers can bring in somewhere in the region of £5-6 million for the pair of those, Cantwell and Haji, then I think that is pretty decent business. Let us know if you agree in the comments, folks. On that Champions League draw, Rangers will play the winners of either Dynamo Kiev or Partizan Belgrade. The first leg takes place, I think, either tonight or tomorrow, that game. The following leg, the week later, Rangers will be away. They'll be away for 2 legs, of course, with Rangers playing at Hampden, but they'll either face a trip to Poland, where Dynamo Kiev play their football, I believe, or Serbia on August the 6th or 7th, with the return at Hampden on August the 13th. If they can get past that round, then they will play, I think they'll play either Lille and the winners of Lugano and Fenerbahce, or FC20 and who's the other team that they could face? 20 or
the winners of
I've got it up here. Let's see, they could play 20 or Red Bull Salzburg of Austria.
I forgot about them. That would be difficult.
This is my viewpoint on it. We touched on it there, Joshua. If you're playing Hearts tomorrow, I wouldn't believe that this team is capable of going over to Edinburgh and getting 3 points. If Rangers were taking on either Partizan or Dynamo Kiev, who I think are the favourites for that game, I wouldn't have much confidence that this Rangers squad is capable of negotiating past the third qualifying round. When you reach the playoff round, if you're good enough to reach that stage, then it'll be probably even tougher, the challenge. So like you say, it is imperative Rangers bring quality into the starting, not just the squad, the starting 11. We need players that are going to improve this first team, or else, we can kiss their Champions League hopes goodbye. I've said it before, said it on the Q&A yesterday. Give me the Europa League every day of the week, but understand the financial necessity, the financial reasons to get into the Champions League for Rangers, and why it's important they get past these 2 qualifiers. But you get into the Champions League. I think it's 4 matches at home, 4 matches away with a revamped format. Can't say I'm looking forward to it if Rangers get in there, Joshua. I've got to admit, I think they'll be in for a few hidings.
Yeah, obviously the last time, and we covered this kind of when we did the interview with Dave Voss, who explained that when Rangers went into that Champions League campaign, and he was a bit critical of the recruitment, effectively saying that there was a couple of players that Van Bronckhorst had wanted, but there was also the fact that Rangers had lost Bassett and they'd lost Aribo, and 2 of the players that had played the most consistent amount of minutes, but 2 of the players who had really enabled the style of play that Van Bronckhorst wanted. and he'd went and brought in, I think, Suter and Davies, neither of whom had played. Suter obviously had his injury issues, which it's important to remember. Rangers believed they could fix those, and they, looks like to an extent they have, which is an important thing to remember. But Suter and Davies, neither of them had played in the last 2 seasons. Well, I guess Suter had, but he'd had his injury issues, obviously, hadn't he? And he arrived at Ibrox and picked up that injury in the opening day of the season against, who was at Livingston. And then Davies had been out on loan, I believe, to Sheffield United at one point in the last 2 seasons, but had obviously been at Liverpool and not played much. Then you signed Tom Lawrence to kind of replace that Aribo position. And again, he was injured early on and didn't play the Champions League campaign. So you ended up with Leon King and James Sands at centre-back for a large proportion of that Champions League campaign. And you were also, I think, because of the World Cup, you were playing games much more. You didn't have a break in between the midweeks. All that to say, it all culminated in an absolute disaster, didn't it? If Rangers were to get into it again, the thing to remember is that winning the Europa League, I think, now equates to finishing 24th in the Champions League on the basis of the prize money you get, which is, it's just so significant.
I get that, but fans aren't into. I get the financial side of it, but fans want to dream of a Seville. Unfortunately, the Champions League have ripped that apart for teams like Rangers. So they want
to dream of Seville, but they also want good players in, and good players cost money, don't they? So it's that balance. I mean, the ideal situation is always going to be what Rangers did in 2007, 2008, where you get the run and you get the excitement of that. You get a couple of big Champions League wins. Obviously, that peters out. You finish third. You don't have to go into you don't get well beaten in the group stage, and then you still get your European run, don't you? That I think is the ideal situation. But I take your point. A repeat of the last Champions League group campaign would be a nightmare. But first and foremost, getting there, I think, is going to be really difficult for Rangers. I forgot about Salzburg when I was making that earlier point. PSV, I still think PSV last season, if you look at where they got to in the Champions League, which is obviously out of the group stage, if you look at what they did in the Eredivisie, if you look at where a number of their players have been playing over the summer in major championships, I think PSV are probably stronger than any of the teams Rangers will face in the group stage, in the qualifying stage for the Champions League this season. But obviously, as we've discussed, Rangers squad is not in great shape at the moment, and there's a big element of the unknown going into this season. Especially that third round game, though, you would look at that and say, I think Rangers wanted to probably avoid USG, who obviously have improved since Rangers beat them a couple of seasons ago. Fenerbahce would have been a difficult away day had they gone through from the second round as well. It's going to be a difficult away game in particular, but also the fact that the home game, there's a big element of the unknown there because Hampden isn't Ibrox, and Ibrox has been such a big factor in the Rangers' European nights over the last few years. So it's going to be intriguing to see how they do, but also the squad that they go into that double-header with Derek, because they, as you say, as we've reiterated this morning, and I'm sure we'll continue to over the next week, if they go into that competition with the squad as it is now, I don't think the most optimistic person would give Rangers a chance of getting there, getting to the Champions League. Let's see how much work they can do over the next number of days to their squad and see what their squad looks like going into that double header. Because I think you can only make 2 changes to your squad between the third qualifying round and the playoff round. And obviously that playoff round happens near the end of the transfer window as well. You remember when Clement came in January, he had to leave key players like Oscar Cortez and Leon Balogun out of that double header against Benfica because of the makeup of Rangers' European squad. So that's an important thing that they're going to need to get right over the next week.
Yep. Andrew Cleland pulling me up for Candias thing. He says, Derek, think of something original, not the Candias line. Can't think of anyone else, to be honest, on that right-hand side that was half decent at right wing. That's the reason why, Andrew. But there you go. Lots of people. Nevitz, I'll address this. He says, Derek, I thought I saw you last week at the Glasgow Science Centre. I didn't think it could be you, was it? It wasn't me, Nevitz. So thankfully you never went up to whoever that guy was. Maybe it's a lookalikey, but it wasn't me. Know that many of you tune in on Instagram. Big hello to a good friend of the show, Stephen Pudden, who says, good morning, guys, from sunny and baking Dubai. So over there enjoying himself. And Scott Patterson as well says, Barnett looks sensational this morning, Derek. Unquestionably better than mine. Yeah, got the Tintin look on the go this morning. But yeah, there you go. Right, if there's any transfer news, folks, any breaking stuff coming out in terms of departures or incomings, you'll be the first to know. Just keep your eyes peeled on our social media channels and on the YouTube channel and website as well. A little bit later on, those of you that are there extra members, I'm going to be speaking to a Spanish football expert. As we all know, Rangers had a loan bid knocked back was it just over a week ago now for Joan Jordan of Sevilla. So we're going to get a little bit of an insight into the player himself, what his situation is, and where he is likely to go. As time of recording, I don't think Rangers have submitted an improved offer. Sevilla were looking for Rangers to cover more of his weekly wage, but we'll get a little bit of insight into him later on, round about 3 o'clock this afternoon, folks. So we hope you can join us for that. Right, big thanks to Joshua and each and every one of you for tuning in to the show. Just before I forget, if you want to join up to our WhatsApp group, the link is in the description below this video. So click that, folks. We've got many of you joining, so you can keep up to date with all the latest news on there as well. So yeah, go and click that when you get a chance. Right, we'll speak to you later on or indeed tomorrow. Bye for now.